Mind the gap.
Good afternoon, Fabrizia. How are you?
Hi, Yogo. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a nice sunny day here. It's actually going to be sunny for a while, which kind of a problem because we are going through a drought period. So the land needs water, but we're getting sun. Oh, I don't know how's the situation up there in the UK. You're in the UK, right?
Yeah, we got rain, and no, today did not rain, so it was cloudy and a little bit of sun, but it was okay. I was driving, traveling, so I was happy not to have rain.
Okay, enough about weather because after a while it's it's boring. We're just using this to remember that you are in the UK, and I think you just returned from Birmingham, right?
Yeah, I went to the photo show, which was I was a speaker there. The photography show in Birmingham is the biggest photography show in the UK. And I was a speaker there for the first time. Actually, I went there for the first time because last year I couldn't go, and it was interesting. And yeah, we'll talk about this later. But it was a really, really nice experience. Lots of people lots and lots of people. So
Do
a
you,
really good show, and lots of classes and master classes and all sorts of speakers everywhere. There were a lot of very interesting things going on. So
so do you
yeah,
recommend going there?
yes,
Yeah,
I definitely would recommend it. Yes.
yeah. I didn't know about it. I mean, I knew about the photography show. I've been knowing about it for some time, but I think they do not consider me their target market because I didn't get any ads or emails or sponsorship for this, so I didn't know. Otherwise, I would have come. It would have
Oh,
been fun.
next year we get together.
Yeah, next year. I was even trying to go to their website and trying to see if they already have the dates out for the next year or they have a way to sign up for a mailing list or newsletter, but couldn't find anything. So I really would really like a reminder. Maybe you can send me a reminder when they open up the
I will.
the gates for next year. I will sign up, try to fit it in my calendar for next year because I saw that a few other friends were there. They were posting on social media about being there besides you. So that would have been really nice to be there. Next year, there's always one more
Yeah,
opportunity.
it
So
was nice. And if you don't go and stay in the hotels at the center, which are really terrible, and if you go to Solihull, which is only 10 minutes away, there's some really nice restaurants to go to. So it was quite a pleasant few days. All in all, it was all quite well organized and nice.
so is that a show very much for professionals or for amateurs? Is very much about the business of photography or more in general?
There's both. Saturday and Sunday was open to non-professionals, obviously to professionals as well, but open to non-professionals. And then Monday and Tuesday were just open to professionals. And I was there for the weekend, and then I was there on Monday, and it was packed every day. And a lot of professionals, but also a lot of amateurs. I was speaking on a stage that was dedicated. There was master classes for people who are turning pro, so people who are not professionals but they are thinking of becoming professional. And I think the room held about 200 people, and it was packed both days. So there's a lot of interest on at all kinds of levels.
So that there's a lot of interest on the part of amateurs towards turning pro. You're saying, right? I think we are going to talk about a specific topic in a future episode. But
Yes.
what I find funny is that there's a lot of amateurs that want to turn pro, and then once they are pro, they start complaining about the amateurs.
Yes. A lot of them, we see that on social media so much, and it always makes me, as part of it makes me laugh and smile a bit, and part of it kind of pisses me off a bit, because we should not be worried about newcomers into the business. Everybody has to start somewhere. And so I don't understand. I do understand why people are very insecure and they feel like these newcomers are going to steal their work. And so there's a lot of ranting and raving about nothing, I think.
There's a lot of ranting and raving, and it was just today. So yet again, another post on Facebook where somebody was sharing another post where somebody was asking for first-year birthday party photographer to do a session there, and they would say we cannot pay more than 25 euros, which is kind of ridiculous, of course. But then, of course, everybody started ranting about this. So those people that they said, what is really upsetting is not that people are asking for birthday party service for 25 euros, but that they will find people who will do it for 25 euros. And that means that those people are devaluing the marketing, are devaluing the profession, and it will be harder for us to ask the money that we're worth, right? And it's not the first time I've seen this. And of course, it's not always against something as ridiculous as asking 25 euros for a full service with photos and so on, but even for 250 euros, or people who do a wedding for peanuts, essentially, which is a reality. And they got Uncle Bob doing their wedding photos, or a younger guy or girl who is doing so just to get an experience. And maybe they will not do a good job, but they're still doing it. So those clients will think that all wedding services or wedding albums and photos and so on will only cost that amount. So the people who are asking now more will see their value, the market devalued, and will find it harder to sell what they used to sell for, like maybe 1,000 or 2,000 euros or more. And yes, you said it always. I see that a lot, and you said that as well. So what's your opinion about this? Do you have any?
Well, I have a story that I can tell, and I tell people often, because when I moved to Austria and I decided to start, doing photography, first I had to wait because I had to learn a bit of the language. And so I was just waiting to learn the language. And when I started doing portraits, and then I started adding weddings to my offer. And I didn't have any. I had done some weddings before, years and years and years ago, but I didn't have anything done there. I didn't have anything that had a Tyrolean feeling that people could relate to. That could, they could see that it wasn't something done. So I wanted to do a couple of, to do a wedding, just for my portfolio. And I had my daughter's teacher, who was getting married, and she was a pretty girl. And I said to her, we had done a course together for her school. And I said, well, if you're getting married, do you have a photographer? And she said, I didn't know you did weddings, because on your page you only have portraits, which is another thing. Show what you want to sell, okay? If you don't have it on your website, it's going to be difficult for people to book you for things that you want to do. So anyway, I said, well, and she said, we already booked a photographer, and we already paid for it, and it's a friend of a friend of mine, and he does it at weekends, and we paid 500 euros for him to come and do the wedding. And so I said, okay, no problem. And then I said, well, what is he going to shoot? And so, he's just coming to do some portraits and to the ceremony. And then they do 2 ceremonies in Austria, because their weddings are really long. So they go to the church, and then they go to the town hall. So it's 2. And then they have a party on the street. And then they go to the reception. And then they have dinner. It just goes on and on. And so I said, look, he's not coming to your house to do the getting ready. And she said, no, he's only coming for a few hours, during the day. I said, okay, I will come and shoot what he doesn't shoot. And then I will shoot whatever I want. I won't charge you, but I will shoot whatever I want in the way I want it. So to me, it was like I have total freedom of doing what I want because you're not paying me, right? And then I said, and then if you want some of my photos, and if you'll see them, and then you can choose what you want afterwards, and you can just pay what you like, and if you don't like them, fair enough. I just use them for my portfolio. So I wasn't asking for money, and I was shooting whatever I wanted. As it turned out, she saw the photos that I took. She made an album. She made wall art for the house. She made copies of albums for her parents. She made fine art prints for herself as a box, and they ended up spending about 3,000 euros with me. And the discs, the CDs with the photos from the other photographer, who was very nice, and he was not in my way, and I wasn't getting in his way. He was very nice to me. Anyway, they're still sitting in a drawer somewhere, and they never printed any of them. So this just goes to show that you do things different, people will see the difference. And if they don't see the difference, then you have a problem, right?
Yeah, I think it's all about the value. I think we should talk about this value and the perception of value that the clients get. But just want to take one of the things you said about people that only do photography on weekends, right? They have another job. And on the weekends they do photography, and this allows them to be very cheap because they are not using this job to actually, it's extra money typically, right? They don't need it. They don't really need it. So it allows them to be cheap because they have almost no expenses, and they don't have to spend a lot of day trying to find customer, to manage books, and so on and so forth.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
There is a difference though. Some people who do this as a second job, and so they may have a day job. They do this at weekends, but they are registered photographers anyway. They do pay taxes on the money they make. They charge less because they don't need to pay all their bills and put all the livelihood onto this one job. They have another job that pays the bills and brings the money in to eat, at the end of the month. And so they can do it as it's not a hobby. It's more serious than a hobby. They invest a bit more into it, but they are not breaking the law, essentially. So they do need to charge a bit more. Maybe they don't charge as much because they're not doing this full time. It's not their first job, like I said, but they are okay, and they are getting started. Maybe one day that business will grow and they will be able to ditch their job, and this is the whole turning pro thing. You start something and you get better at it until one day you can actually shift from one thing that maybe a job you don't like to photography that you love. Okay. The second kind of people are people who are just doing it, under the counter. And so that happens in every trade and in every business. People are going to fix your car for, and without giving you an invoice, and people who are not. Of course, what happens is that they don't have insurance. They don't have a whole load of, the guarantees that even a semi-professional would have for his clients. So clients go and book these people for 25 euros or whatever it is at their own risk. And if ever there is even a check or something, they might be in trouble. So it's two different kinds of people that do this weekend work, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't even want to go into the category of those who do it under the covers. That's not. But full disclosure, I'm actually in the first category that you were referring to. I mean, I still do have another job that is paying the bills for me. Plus, I do photography as a registered professional. The difference there is probably that I I don't have low prices. I set my prices to the level that they were if I were full-time employed in photography.
Yeah.
Even maybe more than the average, because that's where I want to go, and I don't want to be perceived as one who is cheap. Because then maybe I will always attract cheap clients. Right?
Absolutely, yes.
But what I wanted to say is that. And this is something that I answered to somebody who was making this rant against people only working on weekends. And he said, the manager of a company who has a lot of money to spare, and he buys a nice camera, and then he does weddings or any other type of photography in the weekend, has an unfair advantage because he can allow to, if he wastes his money or loses money, that's not a problem for him. And I said, well, maybe that's an unfair advantage, but he has a disadvantage because 5 days of the week he has to work at his job as a manager at a company, and that can be very demanding as a job. And he also probably has a family and he wants to take time off. So he only has 2 days a week to dedicate to photography. And you have 7 days a week if you want. And in those extra 5 days, you have the opportunity to grow your skills, to become much better than he can ever be, only working 2 days. You have 5 days where you can do marketing, develop your network of customers or connections and so on. You can go to a conference to get yourself out there and be known. You can write for journals, newspapers, magazine, other blogs and so on to get your name out there, and the manager can't because he doesn't have the time. So he has an advantage, but you have an advantage that can make you stand out more than he will ever be able to do. So that's not.
Yeah, and also unfair advantage about buying some gear. That is never the advantage, because whether I buy a camera, I bought a camera that was barely over €1,000, I think, when I started, because I didn't have much capital, I didn't have much money. I worked with it for 2 years. It wasn't even a full frame. It was a D7000. Works really well. It did what I wanted it to do. It was perfect for what I wanted it to do. It was not full frame. The quality was great. It printed wonderful albums. Everything was fine. When I was making more money, then I bought a full frame, and I invested in lenses before I even invested in a camera. So what is the unfair advantage? We don't need that much to do good photography. You really can do good photography with your smartphone. You can, So it's really about your skill and what you bring to it. And so this ranting about somebody just because they have more money or they don't need the money, they have an unfair advantage. I don't think. Also because how much is a lot of money? It's different for every one of us, For some people, €1,000 is a lot of money to spend on a camera, and for some, it's like you don't even get a lens with that. So, what is the unfair advantage? I don't see it. It's only about. I think it's people's insecurities that really play against them, and the fact that you've got to blame somebody outside of yourself for the situation you're in. So you're not getting enough clients. It's because there's all those other people out there who work for for less than my price. And that's not taking responsibility for your own work and for your own business, and seeing that you got to change something to make it work.
But let me play the devil's advocate here, because I'm just repeating what I read, right? Those amateurs that work on weekends or whatever, they are driving down the market price of photography. And we won't be able to sell at the same price that we used to. And the clients are not able to perceive the difference between an amateur that does, as you said, for €500 does a wedding, but I do the same work for €5,000 and they will not see the difference. ignoring the fact that you just gave an example of the exact opposite.
Exactly. Your devil is very uninformed.
It is.
Okay, if I have somebody down the street that does exactly what I do for a third of the price, I need to take responsibility for the fact that I'm not a very good photographer then. There are some very talented hobbyists. I'm not putting I'm not putting people down in terms of, a hobbyist, an amateur can take amazing photos because they can work on their skill for something that they absolutely love for years and years and years. Maybe they've done it for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And they never had to, make money on it. So they were free to explore their creativity, to experiment, and to grow their skill. So the problem is the difference between an amateur and a professional is not the level of the skill. It's the fact that if you tell me this is a job, this is the day, this is how I want it, right? Or this is what we're going to do. On that day, no matter what happens, I deliver. Mm-hmm. And I deliver high quality photos. An amateur can go and take the same photo 10 times until he gets it right on different days, because for 9 times he gets it wrong. And then he will publish the good one, right? We don't have that chance. We have to do it this day with this model, with this wedding, with this portrait, with this whatever it is that we do. We need to do it when we say we do it, and we got to get it right first time. That's being a professional.
Yeah.
We deliver the job, and an amateur doesn't have to deliver anything on that day. It doesn't work, I'll do it again tomorrow, next sunset, next sunrise, next whatever time the birds fly by, whatever. I can take all the time that I want to get the shot that I want. And so that is the big difference. Yeah. And so that's one thing. And the other thing, again, if you can't see the difference between what I do on that day and someone else does on that day, then it means that you really need to work on your skill. And the third thing is, it's not just about the photography. Photography doesn't bring you clients, it's a service. So there is so much more that goes in. You mentioned your brand, your marketing, your the way you deal with clients, everything that we talk about when we talk about business. Business is 20% photography, 80% a whole bunch of other stuff. And if you don't do it, then you're not going to get anywhere, and you cannot grow as a professional.
Yeah, I think you're too good, because I was replying on one of those threads on a comment said that it's not just the quality of the photos. And the quality of the photos, photography is what we do. I said 10% of the time, and 90. Yeah. You need to be 10% of the time. You need to be a really good photographer, just to. Yeah. People can see the difference. 90% of the time, you really need to be an amazing business person, a great marketer, a genius at putting your name out there. That's what you need to do to stand out. Then you will not worry about the amateurs that will steal your job. And if you do, other people who are willing to pay 25 euros for a birthday party or 200 euros for a wedding, are they really your target market? Is that where you want to go?
Absolutely not. No. And anyway, besides all that, I have never seen a master baker or a patisserie place complain because mothers bake their own birthday cakes for their kids. Mm-hmm. It's like everybody does everything, so it doesn't really matter. The same mother who bakes the cake tomorrow can go to this master chef and order £100 cake, right? That is beautiful for some special event. We all have clients who take their own photos a lot of the time, and then sometimes they say, okay, now I want this family portrait done really well. I'm going to go to a professional. I'm going to spend some money and invest in it. And so our clients understand that. And I think the photographers who complain about this situation, they still have an amateur mind. What I think is that nobody becomes a photographer because they have an entrepreneurial mind. Otherwise, they would have done something else, right?
True.
So we all come into this profession because of the passion, because we're creatives, because we love photography, and because we just want to do it 24/7. And then we have to realize that we are running a business. We have a company to run, and we have to be entrepreneurs. And if we don't learn how to do that, the business is going to go under. And 80% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. That is across the board, not just in photography. I think in photography, probably more, because photographers are not good at, that's not, unless they come from a corporate job, and so they've already done that transition, and they've been maybe in marketing or in a big company working. But if they go straight into photography, they have no clue how to crunch numbers, to make things work, and to do their own, branding, marketing, and to place themselves in a market and do all of that stuff. So that's what happens. And then people take their clients and then they complain.
Mm-hmm. So the solution is not to lower your prices.
Never. The solution is actually double your prices, because then there will be, and then live up to them. Then your service has to be up to that standard, obviously. Otherwise, you're just ripping people off. But the solution is to go up and to create a big, meaningful gap between the weekend warriors and the professionals who do a great job. There is no what I call the shark pool, the middle ground. That's where everything is really, really difficult, trying to survive in there. That's where everybody's fighting for everything. It's that middle range thing that nobody wants to be in.
There's a similar rant that you can sometimes goes around and around on social media. Maybe I should stop reading so much social media, but I use it a lot to keep in touch with people. So sometimes I'm subjected to those rants, and it is where people will share a meme or there was one where a photographer was sharing a photo of him together with laying on the ground together with all of his equipment, and says, when I ask so much money, it's also because I have all those equipment that I had to pay for, not even mentioning the hours of training I had to go through and pay for them, and so on and so forth. And my reaction is, nobody cares. Nobody, but the other photographer, your customers don't care about how much your bills cost, right? They only care about the value that you're delivering. So you cannot justify your prices based on how much it costs to produce that. Not in this field, I believe. I mean, you're not selling cars or sugar or a commodity, because if you're just basing your prices.
In no field. Have you ever heard of like a really good butcher that maybe has really good meat and costs more than a supermarket, to have outside start complaining that how much it costs to run the shop? They don't, and that always makes me laugh. It's you can do the same job with a lot less equipment most of the times anyway. You
don't go to a 3-star Michelin restaurant and they give you the bill and it's 300 euros, and you say, I want to know how much your pans cost or the oven. That's not the point. There are some if you're selling a commodity, you're selling sugar, you're selling machine parts, it's not maybe a commodity. But if you're selling screws and bolts and nuts, well, of course it's based on price. There are differences in quality, but for anything that is even remotely creative, be it cooking, writing, taking photos, that's not the cost of the equipment that determines the price, or that you should use to justify your price. Of course, you have to take into account your cost of producing the goods. Otherwise, you would go out of business. But you don't use that to justify your prices and say, you should respect me, I cost so much because of all these. I have 4 cameras, 19 lenses, 3 bags, an army of assistants, and studio lights.
Yeah, it's exactly
Do I
the same
care?
thing. And some people, I work with a lot of photographers, and then we talk about, making a price list and talking about, how much to charge for, a print. And they go, oh, how do I justify charging so much for a print when, the client can go into the shop next door and buy it for, half 50 cents or €1 or whatever. And I always say, like, I don't sell paper and ink.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's fine art paper and ink. I don't sell paper and ink. I'm selling my image. They can go and print their own image for €1. Mine costs a lot more because it's my image, right? So people have this thing that, the stuff that you're printing on the album or whatever should be, should cost so much because, a client can go and find it somewhere else. First of all, I offer things that clients cannot buy by themselves because they're only made for professionals. So it's really important that we also offer things that are different, that the quality of everything that we do is different. Otherwise, what are we here for? There needs to be a very, very clear difference between professional photography, which is a luxury item. Absolutely a luxury. It is not a commodity. It is not, food and heating and a roof over your head. It's not clothes. It's not basic, things you need. Nobody needs photography. It's something that is a special thing. It needs to be.
Okay, I think we've...
I think we ranted enough.
We've ranted enough. We ranted against the rants.
Counter-ranted.
Counter-ranted. Don't want to keep this episode too long, but I feel like we have material for more. As we said, we'll be talking about turning pro in a future episode and so on. But I think we've given our view on this debate, and I think we pretty much think alike.
Yes, and that is a really good thing. I realized that, especially speaking, it was something that I've been thinking about for the past few months, and it's the reason why I went to speak at the photography show on the turning pro stage, because there is so little education about turning pro, and there is nobody really teaching anything. But what do you need? Now we said you need to spend 90% doing all other stuff, but people who want to turn pro, how do they, where do they find this information? So I am going to start a program about it, and I'm thinking about it, and there's a lot to be said about it. So yes, we could do another podcast about it and just give people some information about that. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would like to know a bit more about the non-photography side of being a professional photographer.
I would just like to close this episode by quoting again Seth Godin, because I love him.
Yes.
And I believe that you cannot be a really successful professional photographer if you have not read at least a few of his books, you're not subscribed to his blog or to his podcast, because it's so... I'm just kidding, but I mean, it's really a treasure trove of tidbits and suggestions and things. And he has this blog post that he wrote some time ago, and it's titled "Nobody Dabbles at Dentistry," which I would like to, if you give me a minute to quote in its entirety. It's very short and it's very, very apropos about what we were saying. And Seth says that there are some jobs that are only done by accredited professionals. Like, I'm just adding, you could be a surgeon, okay? You don't want an amateur to be a surgeon. But then there are most jobs, and jobs that some people do for fun, now and then, perhaps in front of the bathroom mirror. It's difficult to find your footing when you're a logo designer, a comedian, or a project manager, or I would add a photographer, because these are gigs that many people think they can do, at least just a little bit. If you're doing one of those non-dentist jobs, the best approach is to be extraordinarily good at it. So much better than an amateur that there's really no room for discussion. You don't have to justify yourself. Your work justifies you. The alternative is to simply whine about the fact that everyone thinks that they can do what you do. The thing is, it might be true.
Absolutely.
And I think this does not, as we said, does not only apply to, you say you do not dabble in photography if you want to be really great at it, right? There must be no room for, but it's not just about the quality of the photos. It's about much more else. It's about what the fact that a professional can deliver, can be dependable, and can be a great business person. That's all part of the overall skills of a professional photographer or a professional creative artist in any logo designer, right? Or anything else.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That absolutely sums it up. So
good.
Yeah.
So that's
good. Then I'll.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Good. So I think we've covered this topic in great depth, and I'm sure our listeners will have appreciated this. But again, there's always a way to send us feedback. Tell us what you love.
Yes, I would really like to know what they think. Talking to the listeners, what do you think about this, and what do you feel about what we spoke about? If you leave your comments and more questions, then we'll pick them up next time.
Of course, you can just go to our website at closingthegap.live and click on this episode. This is going to be episode 11, I believe. And under every episode, we have a little button where you can just click. And if you want to just record a question or a comment, you can do it very quickly, like a voice message. Or you can use the old method of typing a comment or getting in touch with us via email or our contact form on the website, whatever works. We are listening to everyone. We really want your feedback. So thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to you, Fabrizia, for your time. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week. Bye-bye.